Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up. And thank you all for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. And today, I'll be discussing Halloween, both the original from 1979 and the remake from 2007. And I'll be joined by another very special returning guest. He's a film buff and connoisseur. And if you thought my voice was relaxing, well, you're about to be put to sleep. Please join me in welcoming back Night of the Nightwatch Zone. Night, welcome. I am so excited to have you back on my channel to talk about one of the most iconic serial killers in horror.
Yes, I'm so happy to be back too. I appreciate this. And you know me, I'm a huge fan of Halloween, the franchise of Michael Myers. So can't wait to get into this. I can't wait.
Hell yes, he is one interesting fellow to talk about. But before we get into our thoughts on these two movies, here's a brief summary for both, and beware Stardust. There will be spoilers. Starring Jamie Lee Curtis, PJ Soles, Nancy Keys, Donald Pleasance, and Nick Castle as Michael Myers, Halloween focuses on Michael, a masked killer, who escapes from a mental health facility and returns to his hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois. On Halloween night, he stalks and terrorizes teenager Laurie Strode and her friends, while Dr. Loomis, his psychiatrist, attempts to stop him. The remake stars Scout Taylor Compton, Danielle Harris, Sherry Moon Zombie, Malcolm McDowell, Tyler Mane as Michael Myers, and a whole slew of other notable actors. With this one, we get Michael Myers' backstory, and he is humanized and more sympathetic, unlike the evil supernatural entity we get in the original. He escapes the mental health facility yet again to find his sister Laurie Strode, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. All right, so Night, what were your feelings when you saw the original, and what was your experience like when you saw the remake?
Well, for the original, that was one of the earliest horror movies that I really got into that really started my horror fandom, to be quite honest. As a kid, seeing it on TV, it creeped me out. Okay, let me just be honest. It totally creeped me out. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice.
The original Friday the 13th was the first horror movie that got me on this path. And then actually I saw Halloween 2 from 1981. And then I was like, man, I got to check out the one before that. So I saw Halloween 78. And it was just one of those movies that I gravitated towards it. The way the story is told, it's really got a charm to it. The music, the music always was a big factor for me. It just kind of creeps you out from the inside. You know what I'm saying? It like really sticks to your core. And I've loved it ever since I was a little kid. All the aspects of it. And when I heard that they were doing the remake in 2007, I had a lot of apprehension, to be honest. I was kind of like, ooh, how are they going to do that? And then I heard it was Rob Zombie, and I was like, ooh, that's an interesting choice, you know. I'm a fan of a lot of his films, but he has a very certain style. You know what I'm saying? He has a certain way that he does things. So I was, at that point we had, seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre get remade in 2003. And I really enjoyed that. So I think by the time the remake for Halloween was coming out in 2007, I was in the middle. I was kind of like, well, maybe, but I will say this, I felt a little bit more of ownership, which sounds weird to say, but I felt a little bit more of ownership to Halloween because that's one of my favorite franchises. So yeah, I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and I will say I was there opening night in 2007 to see Halloween with my brother. And that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I was in the middle. And I definitely have some thoughts on the film.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm excited to hear them because I wanted to keep, I wanted to keep it a secret, as to whether or not you liked the remake. Because I know you're a big fan of the original, and
Mhm,
for myself, I'm actually a huge, huge fan of Rob Zombie's remake.
mhm,
Absolutely love it. I do like the original film as well. I did see it for the first time a little bit later in life, maybe like early 20s, and
mhm,
I liked it, and I appreciated the tension building, the suspense that he was able to build, with the slower shots and just keeping things, in the moment for a while. And I feel like though I've definitely, my appreciation for the original has grown because I didn't fall in love with it the first time, but watching it more and watching more of his movies, I've definitely found a greater appreciation. But Rob Zombie's movies, I've always liked. House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects were a couple of my first reviews on my channel, and I just absolutely love, love, love his style. And because I wasn't a huge fan of the original, like a lot of OG fans were, I think I was able to accept the fact that Michael was no longer supernatural and he was just this big, hulking, real person versus an evil
mhm,
entity. Because I
mhm.
can appreciate both backstories, but which are very similar actually, but with the supernatural aspect taken out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it is Rob Zombie wanted to humanize Michael Myers and give him the backstory, which I understand that because you're not going to sit there and just try to rehash what John Carpenter did. That, that's a recipe for disaster. We know that.
Oh
We
yes.
saw the remake of Psycho, okay, and that was not a good idea. So
Exactly.
I understand why he did that. He actually, when he first pitched the idea to the Weinsteins, his idea was to do one film that was totally the childhood, Michael, his backstory, and so forth, and then the next film was going to be his idea of the remake, a remake
Yeah.
of Halloween '78. But they didn't really like that idea, so that's why the film is cut in half, which there are aspects of it that I think work, and then there are some things about it that I think kind of it kind of cuts its legs out from underneath of it a little bit. But I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But I do appreciate the energy that he put into the film. He definitely put a twist on it. And I think there's some characters in the film that actually work as good as the original. So again, he had a tall task. I mean, you're remaking Halloween. That's really
Yeah,
difficult.
exactly. And he did go to Carpenter and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this remake, just thought you should know." And he was like, "Great, make it your own."
Hmm.
And he absolutely does that.
Yes.
But it's also just unfortunate to learn that, Carpenter, has kind of a bad taste in his mouth because apparently Rob Zombie lied and said that John Carpenter was cold towards him when talking about doing the remake. So it kind of keeps him from saying anything good about the movie. So he, I think, kind of just jumped on the bandwagon with all the fans who are
Yeah.
hating on the remake because, yeah, he just straight up lied about him, which is just really weird for Rob to do. And it's not really
Mm.
out of character. Even though I love his films, I don't really think he and I would get along in real life,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. But he's a
Yeah.
great artist. He's a great
Y-
artist.
Yeah, he's very talented. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you think about his trajectory of his career, coming, from the music, angle and then going into film, and you can definitely see that he has a distinct vision, which,
Hmm.
when you talk about film, that can be a very good thing because it'll keep you, you'll stand out. And that's a very important thing, like you mentioned earlier with House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects. Those are films that to this day, I mean, they're very unique. And there's a lot of great things about those films. But to your point about Carpenter, it's interesting because, from Carpenter's point of view, and I've heard him talk about it a few times and so forth, his viewpoint is okay, hey, well, that's great. There's nothing that he can do one way or the other about it as far as, hey, that's great, go make it, or hey, well, I wish you wouldn't remake, my masterpiece or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But the feeling that he had about Rob Zombie kind of embellishing the story, I can understand how that created a little bit of frustration for John Carpenter. But
Yeah.
to be fair to Rob Zombie, and I know that we'll probably get into that too. There was a lot of behind the scenes tension and struggle and strife and so forth on the production of Halloween and also on Halloween 2. So I I've tried my best in my videos on it because I've done so many. I've tried my best in my videos on it for Rob Zombie to at least not so much excuse him of responsibility, but also to show that there was a lot of things happening to him behind the scenes that definitely made it not such a fun experience.
Yes. He said he had Bob Weinstein in his ear saying, every frame is shit, just
Mhm.
on him, just riding his ass. But, in the end, they ended up loving it. And then when he goes around to do Halloween 2, he's being shown his own movie saying how great it is. He's like, yeah, I know the movie. I made it. I can do this
Mhm.
part 2. But he
Yeah.
really didn't even want to do part 2 because of how frustrating it was working with Bob Weinstein and the other producers.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And they, I
It
guess,
is
somehow
crazy.
found that happy middle between what he was trying to do and what they wanted, but it was still a stressful time for him.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine trying to be creative in that type of environment. I probably would just implode or completely ignore them, one or the other, and
Yeah,
just do what I
no,
want.
I couldn't do it either. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of, money and obligations involved and so forth. So I guess that's how he was able to make it happen. But
Yeah.
he's really it's a special situation, because he's been very forthright in the press and in interviews about what went on behind the scenes. So that's a great story in and of itself. It really is.
Yep, it is. And in going back to making Michael Myers more human, it makes him a bit more sympathetic, which I like to do with my serial killers. I like to get into their head and feel at least just a little bit bad for them, and just understand where they're coming from and root for them just a little bit. Yes, I could also be rooting for them to get caught and to not kill the next person, but being
Mhm.
able to root for them a little bit is also fun. And so with that, we get a Dr. Loomis who is a little bit more sympathetic than
Mhm.
our first one. So how
Mhm.
would you compare Donald Pleasant's portrayal compared to Malcolm McDowell's? And do you think that it works better with him being more sympathetic?
Well, I will say this, well, obviously both actors are fantastic. There's no doubt about that. And I think for Malcolm McDowell, showing that tenderness and caring added another layer to the character of Dr. Loomis, which Dr. Loomis is, as a character, is one of my favorite characters in all of horror. So I was really impressed by how giving that backstory made Loomis more of a complex character. And I think, especially those scenes in Smith's Grove, when he's talking to Michael and he's trying to reach Michael and showing that he cares about Michael, I think those are some of the best character moments for Loomis. And also, like you said, to really get you to feel sympathetic for Michael. I think that there's a lot of things going on at work there that I was not prepared for before seeing the remake. I also want to say that I think Donald Pleasance, his portrayal of the character, to me, it always felt like it was, more of that standard character type where he's like Van Helsing. He's after the monster. And seeing Halloween 78 as a kid and even today as an adult, it's very clear cut. This is the doctor, an older man, which by the way was also a really cool thing too. Being an older man, he's not a superhero. He can't
Yeah.
fight. He can barely shoot a gun. As we
Yeah.
know, he misses I shot him 6 times. It's like he doesn't kill him. So, but his determination to find Michael and to try to stop this storm of evil, that always intrigued me about the character itself. And for the remake, he's given more because he is that. Plus, he is shown to be that doctor. And when you're a doctor such as Loomis, there's a lot that you probably have to deal with. And I think, like I said, those scenes in Smith's Grove, you could even see, I think, his struggle with Michael as far as, this little boy who seems just like a little innocent boy. And yet he is the monster, and how do you deal with that? You're supposed to be a professional, a doctor. You've seen a lot of things, but maybe this was something that he had never seen to this level. So it was interesting seeing Malcolm step into this role. It really was.
Who would do sick shit like this? I think I know whose grave that is.
And do you think, diving into Michael's childhood detracted or added from the horror of either film?
I think if you look at the remake for what it is, no, it doesn't. But for me, being such a fan of the original, I feel as though Humanizing Michael, it gives you the information that you need, right? You see what his childhood is like. You see what his stepfather is like. You even see what Judith is like. You even see the kids at school and the principal, what they're like. And there's a part of me, I remember seeing it when I was seeing it the first time in the theater, and I look over to my brother and I'm like, wow, this kid his life is crap. How is he not going to become Michael Myers?
Yes.
Which is fine. You've got your roadmap and it's right there. But I do think the depiction of him as just boom, one day he woke up and decided he was going to kill Judith, and we have no idea why. I do think that there's a little bit more of an uncertainty for sure, but it also is scarier. Why did he do that? Why doesn't he talk? And the thing about 78 is, for all intensive purposes, he comes from a decent home. It's not necessarily an impoverished environment that he grew up in. So it's kind of like, wow, what really made this kid just freak out and kill his sister? I do feel as though that mystery of Michael, why? Why does he do what he does? Why does Loomis say he is simply and purely evil? That part of it, just to me, I think is a hallmark of his mythology. I think that's what makes Michael stand out from Jason Voorhees or from Leatherface or from Victor Crowley or any of those other standard slashers. So what Rob Zombie did, he gave him more story, and a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain, which was fascinating, right? Because see, that's the thing. As horror fans, and I'm speaking about myself, just myself, we want to know why, but do we really want to know all the why?
Sure.
You get what I'm saying? And it's a catch-22. It truly, truly is, because in the theater, you can bet I was engrossed in what I was watching. I was like, oh wow, that's why. Oh, okay, that's I could see the through lines that Rob Zombie was making. So it's again, he had a tall task.
Yeah.
He really did. He's trying to give us something that we never had, which is great. But then it also kind of runs right up against one of the big things about the mythology. So, but I appreciate it for what it is. I truly do.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
What aspects of the original do you find superior to the remake?
The cinematography in 78, I enjoyed that more. I liked that more. It kind of was more of a character. Dean Cundey obviously is a legend. I mean, we're talking from Halloween to Jurassic Park and beyond. He's done such great work. But that camera work, that movement, that smooth movement, and the way he was able to capture all of those angles and the blue light. I mean, that was a character. for Halloween 78, in my opinion, especially
Sure, yeah.
watching it, either as a kid or as an adult, it like really just, and where Rob Zombie, and again, it's his style, it's much more, rock and, boom, it's intense and all of that. But when Michael does a lot of what he does, especially in that second half, you got some of the shaky cam going on. The angles are cut a little bit more. Even certain scenes like Linda's scene, that scene in the remake, I think is far less effective than 78, and part of that is because he's closed in more on Linda. It's a much more graphic shot, so it's more intense, which works on a different level. But I think that the camera work, the cinematography for 78 is superior. I also, and again, this is from the lens of someone that had obviously lived with the original for so long before the remake. But I also think that the music, I think, again, Rob Zombie added a little bit more intensity to the theme. There was a little bit more rock going on. There was obviously some rock songs in the film, which I do like. And it's funny because I'm sitting here criticizing it, but I do think 78 was superior, because I think that when you have that focus through the theme and its variations, again, it was such a character.
So you're saying that one man picked it up and walked away with it?
Yes.
Doc, I may have been born, but I wasn't born yesterday.
I'm sorry, Sheriff, but please, listen to me. This may be a matter of life and death.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. You come by my office tomorrow.
Tomorrow is too late. Evil is here. It's walking amongst us.
Doc, it sounds to me like you're talking about the Antichrist.
Well, perhaps I am.
Do you think that the remake does anything better than the original?
I do. I think that, first of all, I just want to give so much credit. I always try to do this in my videos and my live streams. I want to give credit to Sherry Moon Zombie.
Oh,
I really do. She gets so much shit, and I understand why, but she gets so much shit, appearing in all of Rob's films, and it's kind of like, well, bro, that's his wife. He has, if that's how he rolls, that's how he rolls.
Exactly.
I think her performances in things like the Firefly trilogy films is great. I love her in those films, but I think in Halloween 2007, she had layers, she had complexity, and I was really invested in her character of Deborah Myers, because she's trying to hold her household together. She's got an older child who's a wild card in Judith. She's got a little baby in Boo. She's got a crappy boyfriend who's abusive and so forth. And then you've got Michael, who, and this was a very cool thing about the remake. You've got Michael, who he seems like he's that normal kid. And we know that he's not, but you get a sense that he wants to be. He wants to be that normal kid. He loves his mother. He loves his baby sister. He deals with his older sister. But I think Sherry Moon Zombie as Deborah Myers, some fantastic stuff, especially at Smith's Grove after the death of Judith. I thought those were some great acting moments. And those are moments that we don't get in Halloween 78. I also think that with the character of Loomis, and again, like I said earlier, I think Malcolm McDowell was able to find a really nice pocket to go beyond what Donald Pleasance did. And for some people, they may not be big fans of that. I actually was, and I always find myself amazed saying that, because I love Donald's portrayal of Loomis, and I think it gives you just enough to have the investment, but you don't have all the answers. But I was surprised that in 2007's Halloween, we got so many answers, and I was cool with that, as far as him as a doctor, what he's all about, how he sees Michael, and also these moments that he spends with Michael, the frustration, the caring, the sympathy. That was fantastic. I thought that was a really good aspect of the remake.
that the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, I do believe it was.
You know, in the remake, we have the directorial cut and the theatrical cut. And the directorial cut, you know, we have Michael Myers getting killed by the police. And then in the theatrical cut, we have Laurie shooting Michael. Which did you prefer?
Well, I think that, you know, having this standoff, well, not even a standoff, he abducts Laurie and she's trying to escape and Loomis gets involved and she gets the gun. I think that it makes sense for what Rob was doing, to have her and Michael at the end and she shoots him. You know what I'm saying? Like it has more impact to me because this Laurie in the remake is a little bit more of a damsel in distress. At least that's the vibe I get. You know, she doesn't understand why Michael's coming after her, which is understandable. Neither did Jamie Lee Curtis's version, but because when he abducts her and he has that moment where, you know, he's kind of kneeling in front of her and he has the picture and so forth, there's probably a part of her that's kind of like, okay, he's not trying to kill me. What's going on? I don't know you, bro. I don't know you. Who are you? You know what I'm saying? So it kind of takes, it probably takes her back a little bit. Whereas with Laurie Strode in 78, he's definitely trying to kill her. She has to protect those kids, which was a whole nother aspect that I think they did better in 78. Like you really saw Laurie put herself on the line to save these kids first, you know, and of course, I mean, that's very, it's cool because, you know, the idea of this was the whole, you know, the babysitter murders, right? But I think that having Scout get that gun and have that moment where she is empowered, you know, and shoots Michael, I think it kind of caps off her arc a bit better. And it shows, you know, she takes ownership of that moment a little bit better too. Because again, up until that point, she was just kind of, you know, run. And she wasn't really able to give much offense. I mean, she does stab him, you know, when he's, you know, kneeling down and so forth. But that other than that was it. Whereas in 78, you know, you have those knitting needles and those clothes hangers, boy. You know, sometimes that's enough to help you with a psycho. But it just showed Jamie Lee Curtis being innovative on the fly and just figuring out what do I got to do to stop this maniac. And so definitely I think with the remake, having Laurie shoot Michael right there and then the screams and then showing the images of young Michael with baby Boo, I thought that was actually a very effective way to end it.
Yes, I would have to agree. I prefer that ending too for the remake, but I definitely do prefer the original's ending over that remake ending too. Him being gone, just like you said, you breathed a sigh of relief when Donald's character, you know, shot him, but then you sucked it back in when you saw that he was gone. So it was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to end a movie. I mean, he's been shot. And he falls off a balcony and you saw his body there, but then all of a sudden he's gone. And and again, you know, and there's little things that sometimes mean so much, you know, seeing Jamie Lee Curtis distraught and kind of crying as if to say, oh my God, where is he? And of course, Donald, a lot of times just face acting is so much, right? And, you know, Donald Pleasance was one of the best in horror, but that idea of where is he's gone. And then of course the camera shots of places that he had been and then eventually to the Myers house with the breathing and the music over it, so effective. I mean, I love this franchise so much, but they didn't need to do a single thing after 78. It was so effective as an ending and it's so powerful. If they had never done another movie, it was just great.
You would think he's out there forever till infinity.
Forever. That's right. That's right. The boogeyman, you know, and that's the thing too. And that just made me think of that too. The whole idea, the mythology of the boogeyman, you know, you had Donald Pleasance speaking about the boogeyman. You had little Tommy talking about the boogeyman and this whole mythology and, oh my God. And Tommy looking across the street and Michael's just standing there. Why is he doing that? Who is he? What is he? That was some of what made it, when I talk about mystery versus giving us the backstory, that's some of what I mean. It's kind of like, what is up with this guy? Is he just a guy? I don't know. Like, nobody operates like this. Why? So, it's just so many interesting things about, as you said in the very beginning of this, about Michael Myers, as that horror icon, that villain. It's like there's so many aspects of him, and I think that's why he's stayed relevant for almost 50 years, is because there's, yes, he has a mask and he's got those baggy ass coveralls, as Busta Rhymes said in Resurrection. And he has that knife, but there's so much more beyond him. There's so much more to his character, and that's why he stands out amongst a slew of other slashers.
Nice. Yeah. So let's rate the original and the remake out of 5. So out of 5 rainbow skulls, what would you give the original and what would you give the remake?
Okay. So again, listen, 78 is one of my favorite films of all time. So I'm going 5 skulls, man.
Oh, snap.
5
okay,
skulls. Then. It's just, look, man, I watch this movie every year. Okay. So it doesn't get old. Granted, there's nostalgia involved with that. Nostalgia always plays a part in things that we like. So I can definitely be upfront about that. But I just think it's such a great movie from A to Z. So many great things. So I'd give the original 5 skulls. For Rob Zombie's Halloween, I would give it 4. A strong 4.
Nice.
Maybe there's a part of me sometimes that could go 4.5, but I'll say 4. I think for what he had to do, the obstacles that he had to overcome, and the choices, most that he made, I think was about as good as it's going to get, for what he was asked to do by the studios, the Weinsteins. I think there was a lot of great things he did. Again, Loomis, great. Deborah Myers, great. You found a way to make Michael human and yet scary as hell. So that was a huge thing. So I give him a lot of credit. He was able to make Halloween a Rob Zombie Halloween film. And again, like I said, I was surprised that it worked the way it did. It really was.
Hell yeah, exactly. It was Rob Zombie's Halloween,
Yes.
which I love. So I give it 4.5 rainbow skulls out of 5, and then I give the OG 4 rainbow skulls out of 5.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And well, before we wrap this video up, would you like to let our fellow Stardust know what is going on over in your channel?
Yes, there's a lot of fun stuff we're doing right now. And ironically, when we get into this time of the year, I'd love to revisit Halloween. And that's why I'm so glad I was able to do that with you. But we're going to be doing watch parties of the franchise, which, the franchise has been a roller coaster, highs and lows. We're going to be doing something that me and my good buddy Steven from the Craven Something Scary YouTube channel, we call Halloween Fest, where we go through all of the films, watch parties, discussions. It's really fun and interactive with the audience. So that's a big thing that we have going on in October. Right now and throughout the foreseeable rest of the year, I have a series that's been really fun I've been doing called Why You Hate, and just going through different films and talking about some of the issues that horror fans have with movies, and if those issues, if they hold as much weight as we think, and it gets into the behind the scenes of films and their production and so forth. So it's been really fun to tackle a lot of films that I think are held in high regard in the horror space, but also those that are controversial. So that's a series that I'm really been excited about and hoping to continue until the end of the year.
Awesome. Sounds awesome. Well, very good. Well, Stardust, please take a look down in the description for all of Knight's links. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and follow. And Knight, thank you again so much for being here. I so appreciate it. It is always a good time chatting with you about horror movies.
Absolutely. I appreciate, this invite, especially for Halloween. When you told me that this was what you wanted to do, I was thinking, oh my God, this is absolutely perfect. And, but no, it's always a fun conversation to have with you, DeRay, and I'm glad that we did it, and can't wait till the next time.
Yes. Well, all right then. Happy Halloween, Stardust. Until next time. Peace.
Peace.